Good morning. Welcome, yoga family. Today I wanted to introduce a vinyasa flow, going through it with a slow motion so you understand the mechanics, the movements, and the alignment as you move through this sequence. So a vinyasa flow, for those that are new, vinyasa and flow are often used interchangeably. And when you come to a class and it's moving very sequentially through from one posture to another, that is a vinyasa where we're linking the poses very fluidly. It's like they just flow into the next pose without really disrupting the practice. So that's a vinyasa flow. And for some people that are new to practicing yoga, say if you're a beginner and you've just shown up to a class and you have no idea what you're looking for, you might have hopped into a beginner class that was flow and moving rather quickly. So what the purpose of this particular video is to slow down those movements that tend to be woven into a vinyasa flow. And most of those movements originated from Surya Namaskara A, which means Sun Salutation A, and Surya Namaskara B, which means Sun Salutation B. Surya meaning sun, Nama is name, so name of the sun. So that is what you typically will see, and variations of those sequences in a vinyasa or a flow class. Now, one of my concerns when I am a student observing in a class, and once we're a teacher, it's really hard to step back from being a teacher. When I see beginners showing up to a practice and they're moving through a sequence that was designed for people that know the sequence and can move through it relatively effortlessly and without injury, and they're moving through it without the understanding of how to perform the movement safely, that's where I get a little bit concerned. So this practice will be for you if you're looking to increase some movement and some speed to your practice and allow your postures to flow more smoothly. So what I'll do is we'll go through the predominantly the main postures that you would see in a vinyasa class so that you understand, even if you need to slow it down, and especially I encourage you to slow it down so that you're performing the movement safely. So we're not beginning with any particular meditation or breath work today, although of course you always pay attention to your breathing and make sure that it continues to be a barometer for your practice. You're finding that you're holding your breath, that means you probably are a little bit anxious. You might need to back off, get control of your breathing again, and then continue on. And at the same token, if you're new, it's not unusual to lose focus on your breath, so be kind to yourself, and anytime you remember, please come back to feeling the breath in each and every pose. So I'll have you begin standing what we call in Tadasana. And even this posture is often neglected in terms of its understanding. So I'd like you'll come to a class and you might hear a teacher say, bring your big toes together, heels slightly apart. And that's how they traditionally taught this pose in India, which was traditionally taught to young boys about the age of 14. So their body structure was quite a bit different than ours, most of us anyway. And so it doesn't necessarily always feel so great in your back. So I often encourage students to find a comfortable distance for their feet, which allows for proper anatomical alignment. So the ankles underneath the knees underneath the front bony part of your hips. So take a moment and find those, not your outer hips, but find that little protuberance at the front of your hips, kind of like headlights, and you want to line that up with your other joint. Now take a moment and just let your feet come slightly forward and back, the weight forward and back. Sometimes we have a tendency of kind of leaning into our heels. We want to avoid that, or sometimes we kind of lean forward and you're gripping with your toes. So see if you can find that even balance in this posture of Tadasana. Now with all 10 toes on the ground, maybe even look down, make sure they're active. So the idea of lifting up through your arches, you'll notice as you do that, you'll feel a little bit of engagement around your knees. So feel that engagement through your quadriceps. And everything's not 100% here. We're always easeful and steady. And the idea of being nice and tall and long from your navel upwards and from your navel downwards. The sensation of being elongated through the side body. Notice how you got a little bit taller there. Beautiful. So we won't talk too much about pelvic floor stability, that type of thing, more about the joint alignment in this particular class. So take a moment and close your eyes. Notice what your breathing is doing. See if you can start to lengthen out your in-breath and your out-breath to be of almost equal duration, and to allow the breath to take up a lot of space in your lungs. Let's inhale, draw the shoulders up. Exhale, around, back, and down. Spread your fingers wide, reach them down. Beautiful. Keep connected to the earth as the crown stretches up. Slight drawing in of the lower belly, letting the shoulder blades come a little bit closer towards the spine, feeling a broadness and openness in the chest, which helps to enhance and support our breath work in each and every pose. Now inhale as we begin the vinyasa. Inhale, stretch the arms up. And sometimes people want to interlace their fingers, but they feel pinching in their shoulders. So this is where I would encourage you to separate your arms slightly. Always finding your way. So the first thing that we've learned in yoga is to practice ahimsa, which means non-harm. So as you're standing in Tadasana with your quadriceps active, almost like you're isometrically trying to spread your feet across your mat, and at the same time keep them together. So you're going to feel toning through the entire lower body and a slight toning in your pelvic floor. So of course we're doing this much slower than you would in a traditional vinyasa practice. In a traditional class, it's typically about 1 breath per movement. Inhale, and on the exhale, spread your wings a lot wide and lead with your chest, coming into a little bit of a back bend here, and with the intention of letting the fingers come towards the earth. Now in a class when they've told you to reach towards the earth or your toes, if you're doing this to get here, you're going to come up, slide your hands on your shins, keep your chest broad, keep your back broad, and tone in your belly. More important to keep this in a beautiful neutral alignment than to dangle on your spine. This isn't what we want. The purpose here isn't just to get your toes to the floor, or your fingers to your toes. It's to maintain alignment and feel sensation in your hamstrings. That's what we're trying to do here. So we'll stay here for a few breaths, keeping that support through your pelvic floor and through your lower belly, and the broadness across your heart to allow for that open, fluid breathing. You're just looking down past your nose. And the next step typically in a Surya Namaskara A or B is to inhale, look up part way. Keep that tone through the belly. Feel the lengthening through the hamstrings and an engagement through your quadriceps. And then on the exhalation, folding the pelvis over the thigh bones so that we're not dangling on the spine and we're bringing the sensation into the backs of the legs. So again, hands may rest on your shins. They may rest on blocks, but oftentimes in a vinyasa or a flow class that's moving around quickly, there's not time to grab those blocks. So as you're folding forward, keeping the engagement through the quadriceps, exhale, perhaps folding a little deeper. Keeping that, you don't want to be feeling any strain in your low back. Gentle stretch, yes. Strain, no. Planting your hands. Stepping your feet back into downward facing dog. So in downward dog, again, we're really breaking this down, and it might not be the sequence that you're used to, but these postures will all come into your vinyasa practice. Typically, the teacher will tell you middle fingers pointing forward. And so your hands are about shoulder distance apart. So try that out, and then make sure the meaty part underneath your thumb is nice and strong. And if you're kind of more forward, you're in a half plank, we don't want to be doing that. Maybe your elbows are out wide. Let's see if you can bring a little bit of isometric contraction to the forearms. Meaning that as your fingers stretch down to the mat and you press down through the meaty part of your thumb, you're also trying to squeeze your forearms towards each other, and notice if that does any alignment change in your shoulders, and then see if you can slide your shoulders into those invisible back pockets and how that might create a little more space. The ears are projecting towards the inner edges of the arms, And as you're pressing the floor away with the strength of the forearms, you're still reaching your crown down into the space between your wrists as you're keeping your forearms isometrically contract. So not bowing in nor bowing out, but hugging the muscles on both sides of your arms. Now my heels are on the ground, but often as a beginner, or even as someone that's been practicing for years, your heels may not come to the ground. That's a-okay. So then you bend your knees, keeping the belly toned, projecting your sitting bones up and then back to lengthen from your wrists to your sitting bones. And then just slowly lower one heel down. Again, typically in a vinyasa, it's not done this slowly, especially if you're in an Ashtanga practice. It's definitely not done this slowly. Finding your breathing. Now inhale, let your right heel rise up, and exhale, let your left heel lower down, while still keeping that strength and tone in the upper body and stretching your crown down towards your wrists. Inhale, let both heels rise up. Then as you exhale, lower both heels down wherever they go as you keep your sitting bones plugging up and back, narrowing your side body. Now on the inhalation, let your shoulders come forward over your wrists. Now sometimes people are way back here and their sitting bones are still way up. Adjust your feet so that you're in a plank position and your shoulders are at the front of your wrists. Walk your feet back if you need to. You can draw your knees to the floor too if you wish, but traditionally in a plank position, in a flow class, the knees are lifted. You're continuing to still isometrically contract the arms, gazing down past your nose as the belly hugs into the back body. Now to come into chaturanga, again, this is one that's often done incorrectly. I want you to shift your weight forward in your toes so that when you come down, your forearms are vertical and your upper arms are parallel to your wrists. You can lower parallel to your ribs. You can lower your knees down here to get better appropriate alignment. And then exhale, lower the belly to the ground. I'm going to move back here. You're going to stay on your mat. So as we come down in preparation, so that was chaturanga, and it's a really tough one to do properly. So I really invite you to go back and spend some time on that, and we'll come back to it maybe in a tutorial. Draw the shoulders back as the elbows hug into the rib cage. You might even open up, let your index finger point forward, and hands kind of slightly rotate open from the shoulders, especially if your shoulders are tight. You can do that as well when you're in plank. Slide the shoulders back, broaden the chest. Now engage your quadriceps, engage your glutes, and keep all 10 toes on the floor with a focus on the baby toenail coming to the ground. And notice how your legs get a little stronger here. In a back bend, because we're opening the front of the body, we want to use the glutes to help support. So inhale, let your chest come forward, your crown come forward as the elbows come back, and then inhale, using back strength and glute strength, draw the chest up. Might be a baby bhujangasana. Notice my elbows aren't out wide. They're really helping the chest open by drawing and plugging back and down towards my hips. Some of you might have a little bit more flexibility, and it's safe for your spine to keep the glutes toned and maybe press a little bit more into the hands, but make sure you're not feeling any pinching in your back. So this is just a little larger cobra or bhujangasana, and some will be able to straighten the arms, but you don't have to, especially if you're like, ahimsa, non-harm. Inhale and then exhale, lower down. Forehead to touch the mat, tuck your toes under, use that upper body strength and tone your belly as you press back up onto your hands and knees. Now exhale the sitting bones back to your heels, keeping the forearms elevated off the ground. Child's pose. This is a resting posture and an alternative to the downward dog that we just performed. Inhale, let your shoulders come once again above the wrists. Ensure that your belly is toned, and again, if you need to, readjust and have your index finger pointing forward so that you're opening up a little bit more through your shoulders. Now, to gain the abdominal strength and the toning that we need for so many of our practices, especially moving into chaturanga, I'm going to have you practice here just lifting your knees slightly. Now pull your belly into your back body and isometrically contract your forearms. So you're trying to pull them together and push them apart at the same time. Beautiful. Keep the tone in your belly, and now pull those sitting bones up and back into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Maybe pedal your heels, maintain that alignment in the upper arms, strength, almost like you have a rubber band around your upper arms. And sometimes when you're in practice with a teacher, they'll actually put a yoga belt around them. So to avoid the yoga belt from falling, you have to kind of press into it, and you'll find that same engagement and those muscle recruitment that we need. Now inhale, look towards your hands. That's where the feet are going to go, and begin to slowly walk your feet there, paying attention to not pulling your low back, but instead feeling sensation in your hamstrings. Inhale, look up to the horizon once again. Remember to tone the belly, broaden the chest. Exhale to fold. Bend your knees as necessary. Inhale, sweep the arms out and up. And exhale back to your heart. So that is half of a round of one sun salutation, Surya Namaskara A. We'll go through it again and we'll modify once again, and I'll talk you through some of the more key components of that sequence. Keeping that isometric contraction through your feet like you're trying to spread your floorboards. Inhale to sweep the arms out and up. Lengthen the side body. And then exhale. We're going to take the hands down through heart center because sometimes it's taught that way. Inhale to look up to the horizon as you press down through your feet and broaden across your chest. Exhale to let your hands come to the ground, bend your knees as necessary, and step your left foot and then your right foot back into plank. Option knees to the ground here. Remember, we want to have those hips about the same height as the shoulders. Press the floor away. And then exhale, shift your weight forward into your toes. So your shoulders are actually going to come more towards the tips of your fingers. That's okay. Exhale, come down so that now you're in proper alignment with the upper arms hugging the ribs. So you can modify here by bringing, I'm just going to come down for a moment. Check out here, if that's really difficult, especially if you're new to this, you can come into chaturanga with your knees on the ground. Notice my arms are still hugging my ribs. If upward facing dog is in your practice, it will look more like this. I'll come back. Feel free to do it with me. You would transition from your downward facing dog nice and slowly. You'll notice that as we move through this slower, you might be getting more out of it than you did in a quick practice. Inhale, shoulders come over the wrists. Come to the tips of the toes. Exhale, arms alongside the side body. Then inhale, shift your heart forward, let the tops of your toes come to the ground. Keep pressing the earth away as you open up. Use the strength through the glutes, the tops of the feet pressing down onto the earth. Nice smooth movement through the top of the chest, and that meaty part under the thumb stays connected. And then exhale, flipping the toes, coming back into downward dog. Remember that option of coming into balasana. Child's pose with the knees on the ground. We'll pause for 5 breaths. It's not uncommon to take 5 breaths in downward facing dog, and always know that your child's pose, this pose with the knees on the ground, is your modification. But we'll prepare to introduce yet another pose that comes into Surya Namaskara B, Sun Salutation B. So elevating, let's shift the shoulders over the wrists, hug your belly into your back body, and let your knees hover off the ground for a moment to get in touch with those abdominal toning muscles. And now draw the sitting bones up and back into downward dog. Let's step the feet forward. We'll start this again from Tadasana, mountain pose. Step, crawl your feet forward, feeling the stretch in the hamstrings. Inhale, look up to the horizon. Feel the stretch in the belly of the hamstrings, not where it inserts at your joints. And exhale to fold. Bend your knees as necessary. Inhale. Sweep the arms up as you press the earth away and then feel those legs engage. That's it. Exhale to heart center. So we'll introduce one more movement in this sequence, in this particular class anyway. It's where we add the lunge in, which is brought into a Surya Namaskara B or a Sun Salutation B, and many other flow practices. So finding your Tadasana, your mountain pose, feeling as if you're trying to stretch the floorboards wide, feel the strength and the support through your legs, the toning through your pelvic floor, lifting it up into your rib cage, keeping all 10 toes on the ground. Feel lengthen through the side body as you breathe in, reaching through your crown, keeping your chin parallel to the floor. Exhale, root down. Inhale, sweep the arms up. And exhale, this time spread your arms wide as you dive forward, looking over the cliff. Fingers to the floor or your shins. Inhale, look to the horizon, broaden your chest, tone your belly. Exhale, folding down. Now step your left leg back. And what you're going to do is we want to make sure that front knee stays above that right ankle, and pivot your left foot out so the left heel comes to the ground. So make sure you're not slalom skiing, but your feet are about pelvic distance apart. And then peel the back outer edge of your left foot to the ground. Now if your knee is way over here, please adjust that by inchworming your front foot forward. Feel the outer edge of your left foot rooting down and the inner left thigh spiraling in and back. There you go, you've just rooted down. Inhale, reaching up. Beautiful. So we want to remember not to forget about that back leg. So let that back foot press down into the ground and feel that engagement through your left inner thigh. Now the right glute is also active, but we're going to feel it a little bit more. Let's just release the arms for a moment. I want you to feel into the position of your right heel. Now draw it towards you. You feel that a little bit more? If you're wobbly, widen your stance slightly. So instead of pressing the feet away, squeeze them towards each other. That's it. Feel that muscular engagement. Keep that right big toe rooted to the ground. Let's try another modification just for a moment if this is not available to you. I'm going to have you bring your hands to the ground, lower your left knee to the floor. Now slide your left knee back a whole lot, so you get a lot of length here. So sometimes I cue this and I see people doing this, but you're going to miss out on the stretch. This certainly is something that we sometimes do, but in preparation for coming into Warrior One, we need to have an open left or open hip flexors. So you're going to make sure that that left knee is way back beyond the hip here, and the right knee continues to stack above the right ankle. Now right here, draw that right heel towards the center of your mat. Yeah, do you feel those hamstrings kick in? Plant your hands on your right shin and keep pulling that right heel towards you. Yeah, you're really feeling that intensify the stretch through your left hip flexors. Great preparations for our vinyasa sequence. And if it feels right, let your arms reach up. Let's exhale, release the hands down, and try that again now in a Warrior One. So peel your left knee up and just step your back foot in slightly and then lower your left outer edge to the floor, outer edge of your foot to the floor. Draw your right knee again over the center of your right foot and then inhale, reach up. Draw your right heel back in space. You won't feel it quite as much, but you'll really feel that you're grounding a little bit more. And then exhale, let's do that all on the other side. So plant your hands down, peel your left heel up, and step your back foot forward. Bend your knees, inhale as you reach up, press the feet into the ground. Exhale back to your heart. Once more, other side. Inhale to sweep the arms up. Exhale, dive forward, pelvis rotating over the thigh bones. Inhale to look up to the horizon. Exhale to fold. This time, stepping your right leg back And draw your left knee over the center of your left foot. Remembering that same internal rotation action of that right leg as you extend the right heel down to the ground. As you draw that left knee forward, if your right heel comes up, narrow your stance slightly. Maintain that. Inhale, rise up. This is warrior one. So you're feeling kind of something here in warrior one. Make sure your right glute is engaged and you're pressing your right thigh bone back in space. Now let's try that modification, Anjanasana. I'm tripping over my words today. Basically a low lunge. Drawing your right knee back and still maintain that same alignment over the left knee and left ankle. Now plant your hands on the top of your left knee and peel your left heel back towards you. You're not really moving it, but you're feeling that engagement and deepening that stretch through your right hip flexors. Beautiful. You can maintain that action through your legs and come into a little bit more of a back bend if you'd like to explore that. So we're keeping the engagement through the glutes, and there shouldn't be any pinching here in the back. Now let's exhale, release those hands down, and try warrior one again. So peel your right knee up, narrow your stance a little bit more so the right heel comes to the ground, and just make sure you don't feel like you're slalom skiing. Now draw your left knee again over the center of your left foot, root down through your back foot, and rise up into warrior one. Virabhadrasana A. Oftentimes you'll hear the cue, draw your left hip crease back, is kind of that same action of drawing your left heel back, but not actually moving it to feel that engagement and that support. Nice work. Now exhale, slowly release the hands down to either side of the foot, peel your right heel up, and step your right foot forward. Inhale, look up to the horizon as you keep the belly toned, and exhale to fold over those thighs. Bend your knees. Avoid those knees from doing the accordion thing, keeping them magnetically parallel. Sweep the arms out and up, and exhale to your heart. Pause for a moment. Breathe, take it in, take in the effects of this practice. Notice how even if you're used to doing a flow class, you might have felt something a little bit more, just a little bit more in this particular sequence. I really do encourage you to do some more stretching, maybe add in some spinal twists, but for the focus of this particular video, it was simply to talk a little bit more through those key postures that are in a vinyasa sequence, especially sun salutation A and sun salutation B. I hope you found that helpful. I'll see you again soon.